Toyala Barduji Jibadi Karelane, Denzi Marik Padre, Denzi Marik Padi Pango Gores. Tis a Denzi Marik Padi Pambala, and Tombani to be share of Comche, Panama de Shem, to Yemavare, Tienzada, Tombani Sadi, that Dohoyada, the Comboyadi, Dambo Tombani, how coach, Dohoya Gichimbuchi, de Tone, on Comboya Gichimbuchi, and Cassingan, that you call Maton, you call my shudere.
Good evening. So we're looking for more than a year now at this text, the Key to the Middle Way, composed by His Holiness. The Middle Way refers to the view of emptiness, and the wisdom that realizes this view is the wisdom realizing emptiness. In order to attain a state of liberation, a state where one is liberated from all the suffering experiences of samsara, one needs to eliminate the root cause of our suffering, the ignorance of self-grasping. And this is done through realizing emptiness, through cultivating the wisdom that realizes emptiness. Other than this, there's no other method, there's no other technique to eradicate the root cause of all our suffering. Therefore, meditating on emptiness is crucial. But before one can meditate on emptiness, one must understand what is meant by emptiness, and one must come to understand and recognize what is meant by emptiness.
Sisan sosorangi nyomode sosorangi mevasogore. Ta sosorangi nyomobe meva kaze nyel zetubne sanji ko nyel top korwa. Dine zanda sosorangi gyula sanji ko ba toyala nyomobadi sosorangi sosorangi mevasogore esorwada.
The ignorance of self-grasping and all the resulting afflicted minds, these minds that cause us such unhappiness and torment, all of these are found only on our continuum. They're not external to us at all. Our suffering arises and it experiences within. And being something that's within our own mental continuum, only we ourselves can eliminate them. Someone can't do it on our behalf, not even the Buddha can do it on our behalf. We ourselves have to come to understand these minds, how to eradicate them, and then eradicate them ourselves. Only we can liberate ourselves.
소소라랑게 소소게 녀모 바디까지 모신고 거로 하고 거로 한 먹어는 매봐서 신고 바로 지난다 소소라랑게 줄에 녀모 바간스 리루 소소라랑게 두치네 삼단에 하고 맞다 삼마단에 제바 맞이나 하고 해요 말로 지난다 소소라랑게 줄에 녀모 바간스 리루 샤다 비네 콘트롤서다 안 되차샤다 나게서 디네 질에 삼로 디네 리고 될 되차래 Samlo Denis Cordi Condore, Samlo Denis Kennedy, and a Nagare, Samlo Denis Kennedy Tesum said, the digging out the same now as Shikta Mario Chasa Hagovache. They have going to and this one can this Yungure, said Janda, this is good and keen, Mebalati, Teneligo Mother, good and keen, this one good Karesha, the Gobani Balavas on the Javache Chagorova.
In order to eradicate one's afflictions, that's what causes all our pain, we have to recognize them. We have to come to know them. And secondly, we have to see how they arise, How do they arise within our continuum? So firstly then, we need to come to understand, in theory, in other words, gather knowledge about what the afflictions are and the pain that they cause. We need to gather that knowledge, but not leave it at mere intellectual knowledge. We then need to apply it to ourselves. In other words, we need to investigate our own mind. Take this knowledge and investigate our own mind, coming to recognize, this is attachment, this is anger, this is doubt, this is jealousy, and see the pain that they cause. That's the first step. The second then is same process, taking the knowledge we've acquired and applying it to our own mind. We need to now come to see what the cause that leads to the arisal of the afflictions. What is the cause that leads to the arisal of attachment and anger and doubt, jealousy and so forth?
Adinigi nyomba nyade tatu chine simju chide karasine kanis yongudu sempege ya nga zo simju chede tene dangbo nga zo nga sebe samlo de le yong chisa nga sebe samlo chigle ne dele tene ane nga le ko ne so sene ko kona ki goro wa ane dine nga la di gudu sebe jala dele mene te chawa ki goro wa ane ya nga se samda nga le yenden di yore ko le de nga dagre sebe nga ya ki goro wa chisa dangbo tene nga sebe nga zimbe nga zin dele tene ane nga zo ge de cha kong nga ya te zum nyomo be chasa dele dele igore la.
We need to, with both of those stages, first gather knowledge, and then, whilst gathering the knowledge, apply it to ourselves, investigate and to see whether it's true. When we have recognized what the afflictions are and come to know them, we then need to seek out their cause. And the cause of all the afflictions, of the wide variety of afflictions, is our sense of self, our self-identity, our self-grasping. For example, what does attachment come from? Comes from the thought of I expressed in I want. And that's attachment. Well, how does anger and frustration and annoyance arise? From the sense of I comes the I don't want. And pride, this comes from the sense of self, and relating to this, our exaggerated qualities. Seeing ourselves as being better than we are. So in this way we come to recognize how each of the afflictions, without exception, arise from our sense of self.
On the nige nga sebe, chesada nga sebe samlo chli adu, tadi nga sebe samlo dele digi nga zula nga de zingorwa. Chesa nga jin nga zu dine nga sebe samlo dele ya nga sebe samlo de nga de ganis nangudu sebe ge simju re chewe ne da. Nga de ganis nangore sne nga se de chik nangdu kapla ya shen kala ma de ko ron woni du de ba nangore. Di ranshin duban demba duban na wa sia da ranshin duban na so di re da koron kala ma rang ngene du de nan go re sin na wa na sin da ga yore sa be nga ji kala ma rang ngene du de hen ji nga de ne yore sa be zimbe zimba de yore da ga ju di de la da sin se or da sin mari ba se or da nga ju nyomo bo ya ke se wi ki di cha go re.
The I, or the self, it is from this that all our afflictions arise. So we come to understand this then in our reflection. We then need to look, how does the I appear to us? Because the process is, there's an appearance of the sense of self, and it appears to our consciousness. Another consciousness then apprehends that self. So how does the self appear? And it appears as if it is something independent, as if it exists by its own nature and is unchanging. So this is what is meant by true existence. The I seems to exist truly by its own nature. And then a consciousness grasps at it, apprehends it, clings to it as existing in the way that it appears. And that is the meaning of true existence. Grasping at something as existing in the way that it appears, as existing truly. And this grasping at the self, self-grasping, is the root from which all our afflictions arise.
Di gansa dazin diya ane garis kiri labna chesa da di chugi dazin siya di yeli dili ki kiyor. Chesa nga se di o nga sebe samlo korwa la dangbo kari tonggo kudu nga zu subu tonggo kore. Yana nga zuki yana subu tonggo yana nga zu sem di samlo kore. Yana chowa di samdang kore. Dini ki samdang dini bini chowa ji nyongyo di kabla 직 초와드 람상 제지 초와드 녀도 갑라 안다고 초와드 로를 리고래 딘디젤에 nga 나기도 세하다 nga 기우도 세하다 nga 대신 리고래 디나지 다고 풍보데 나 주보 지기 두와 수글이야 지는 수보 나자다 지 제반데 다고 수도 통제 수도 발로를 샤고 수도 로를 샤나 어디 nga 나기도 세하지 리고 딘가세 삼 제리고래 제사 디네자 당보 마줄레 마라주 풍보디 마라주 로를 샤고래 마라주 소소라나 풍보디 로를 샤고래 풍보나네다 수기 부츠카브레 수기 풍보 초이부도 남바시 풍보 그 풍봉 시 나 풍봉가 보강로지 발로를 샤 디로를 샤도 풍보디 변한 수기 풍보를 샤와나 수기 풍보를 샤도 간에 샤고르스네 수기 풍보데 간라이마도 랑문이 주는 거래 나와 나신 요래 심 데니시 요래 수 풍보 데니시 예선 짐바디다 다진 최기 다진 소리 될 최기 다진 소리 가 최기 가사 다진 최기 다진 이거로 최기 다진 세지 지난 디 최기 다진의 계세위 제라 안 갈리게스네 네 숙나자 네 숙세디 되는 가 세베 나 삼는데 제링 나라신 주바 짐바디 제리고래 지난 권이 당보 마술에 최기 다진 나 가사 다진 순일이 기고래라는 가 주길라 최기 다진의 일이 기고래 되는 디젤라 가사 다스는 기고래. 다 가사 다스는 디 견전 되는 되셔 콘롱하게 녀모베리티 기고래. 진짜 되는 인자 다 녀모방아 저 요새의 가사 다스는 디나게 자와도 추기 다스는 해서 거다. 가사 다스는 다 되는 되셔 콘롱라서 봐 녀모바 다 녀모바 샤나디기 디젤이 기고래.
This process of grasping at the self has two divisions, or there's first, or there are two divisions. One of which is grasping at the self of persons. The other is grasping at the self of phenomena. So the self of persons refers to the person or the I, the self, and the self of phenomena refers to everything else that exists other than the I. Everything else other than the I or the person. So the self of persons and the self of phenomena both are grasped at in the same way, as existing in the way they appear. In other words, as being truly existent, something that's unchanging and independent, not influenced by anything else at all, but self-existent. So let's say, take an illustration of a suffering feeling relating to physical illness. So if we're sitting here and we have some pain or some discomfort, that comes with a feeling of suffering or pain or discomfort, and this is in relation to our body. So the suffering feeling, this comes about, this comes from, first, the self-grasping. But which of these self-graspings? Well, there's actually a sequence. And the sequence tends to be first, the self of phenomena is grasped as truly existent. For example, our body appears to our mind. We grasp at this as truly existent. From this follows the grasping at the self of persons, my body. Thereafter, the afflictions arise. or the other afflictions other than self-grasping. So what we see here, that the root cause, whilst it can be expressed, and it's usually expressed as self-grasping, is actually grasping at the self of phenomena. Following this comes the grasping of the self of persons, and then the afflictions.
소와 대랑라지 기기다 하고 통고도 하고 이제 류리나 다 류기 소와나 가는데 대랑라지 레어도 니 통용도 디젤람사 응아디 위에 스베삼 기기도 미션달지 답에 내가 저 미디 두라도 당보 미디 야나 기리 고고래 야자 미디 수부 통고도 미 당보 수부 통진에 미디 베기 두라도 마선에 두랍니다 당보 그 수부 통 되는 미디 베기 두 생각도 세상은 저기 제가 다 강사다 풍보인ችን 녀를 풍보지 통 안디니 강사도 해야 돼 자기도 내가 저기가 잡아섬다가 자고도 다보 미두에 미네스다 파당보 담믹다지 미기 직 고수부 통선데 오고반이 되셔야죠 그 야라도 미기 통도 그 수부 야라도 통도 그 야라도 되셔야죠 제가 당보 미기 숙디 통고도 숙 통는 그 거기도 세라 두세 강사 두세 리도아 디나지 가오지네 당보 소수게 수부는 나그여바나 수부 대랑 수부 통네 네네 통여도 디는 가세 삼게 디네 예수 세 니베 수벌레다 당보 수부 통 디네 가세베 삼통 예 디네 예수 세 수벌레 레용 두 심발디네 안저 디소한테 잡아라 방안주네 지 삼단에 되 사고 투여시도아 당보 초와디 나 디부둘라도 직 초와지 용구로와 직 초와 대랑제 초와 용도 초와도 용요도 안디젤라 나 디부인라그로 나 디부둘라그로 지산 초와 동아지 당보 초와 동아지 용베나 초와 동아지 용사베체다 초와 동아지 용도 이거도 풍보의 샤차로와 디디라 나 디부 대부민도라고로와 나세 질리다 당보 초와디 대두 대와다 동아세 나 대부도 나 동아 기부민도 강아둘라게도 디 나세 삼코를 녀라 초와 디도 강로지 롤샤고도와 진짜다 나저 수부고 삼나베나 되네 당보 수부디 롤 파샤 되네 나세 롤샤고도와 마 추기 다서 수부샤도 초와 파샤도 갑로 초와 파샤도 로르야 초와데 간스 능고르스네 랑문이 두바 능고레 징고레 디치기 다진 계차르데라 계차레 다디젤라네 나기부두 세다 제드데 나서 삼리도 나랑 갈라마 랑문이 두바 나지 나디라시 두바 징고레 어디데
Let's take some illustrations to make this point hopefully a little clear. Some illustrations that are easy to understand. So if we're sitting here and we're feeling quite good, or we're not feeling so good. There is a feeling that has arisen relating to our body. Our body is feeling quite comfortable, or maybe it's we're sitting a little uncomfortable on our cushion or chair. So first, we have this feeling, and the feeling is grasped at as being truly existent. So this feeling, this consciousness that is a feeling of comfort or discomfort, is a consciousness, and it's grasped at as being truly existent, as existing in the way that it appears. This feeling is amongst the two types of self, persons and phenomena. It's not the person, so therefore it is phenomena, everything other than the person. So first here, we have the self of persons that is grasped at as truly existent. This particular expression of the self of, or illustration of the self of persons, is the feeling of being comfortable or uncomfortable. From that then follows the sense of self, and we grasp at, I am feeling good, I am not feeling so good. So there we see the grasping at the self of persons follows initially grasping at the self of phenomena. And again here, the self of phenomena refers to grasping at the feeling of the body, feeling comfortable or uncomfortable, grasping at that as truly existent, and then we grasp at the self of persons as being truly existent. And then I gave another illustration. So maybe even a simpler illustration. If we see someone and they stand up, first we see their body, and then so that's the self of persons, self of phenomena, and thereafter, as follows the self of person, seeing them as a person. So first we engage with the aggregate, the physical aggregate, their body, and thereafter the person. Both are grasped at as being truly existent, but first the self of phenomena, thereafter the self of persons.
당보 가르치 거는 추기 다진이 기고래 리제라 가사 다진 리고래서 거 기위 림버체바나 당보 추기 다진 게 되네 가사 다진 기고래 해지래 세상 당한 쪽에다 가사 다음에는 추기 다음에니 또야기 기시도 아니 내가 인지민지 가사에 때도 니를 또 오래 추기 때도 제일 또 오래 되네 가야 말고 그 추기 때도 공부하나 추기 때도 다 가사 추기 다음에 도로와 되네 소소 가사 그런 게 냠는 지도 겁라 당보 아니 추기 때도 동반이 제바시 삼당배네 추기 때도 동반이 도로 추기 다음에 도로 그래 제 가사 시제바시 시제 가사샤 가사에 때도 제바제바이나 내 가사 다음에 도로 그래 제가 되는자 그 또비 림바들라 내 도로 림바들라 지당 타지도 녀바스가요 말에 이 순열 도 그래서
So there's a indefinite sequence in arising. First, the self of phenomena, thereafter, the self of persons. So whilst there is this sequence that first one grasps at the self of phenomena, thereafter arises the self of persons, which is grasped at. So this is a sequence. But in terms of the sequence of which one first realizes is empty, or the selflessness of persons, or the selflessness of phenomena, that is up to the meditator. Whichever one is more inclined to recognize as being empty or selfless, one can focus on that. So either the selflessness of phenomena or the selflessness of persons.
제바 지도 갑라 가사에 된도 제바제바이나 아니 또야 이게 추기다 이게 제바제바다 가사도 제바제바이나 가사드네 제바지나 또야 이게 레라와 요레스 디네자 당보 가사게 된도 제바제 가사 다음에도 디제라네 추기된 삼다바네 둠되고 하고 그래 진짜 디네자 만주게 아니 제름 치게다 만주 냠는 지도 갑라 당보 가리 된도 요선 당보 가사게 된도 제바제 가사 다음에 또 안디제를 추게 다음에 또 그래서
Just to repeat what was just said, there's a sequence in terms of arisal and grasping, first the self of phenomena, thereafter the self of persons. And in terms of which one realizes selflessness of first, this is up to the meditator, whichever they're more inclined to. That being said, Geshe Rinpoche, he repeatedly encourages us to first focus on realizing the selflessness of persons, because this is easier to realize. And once it's realized, selflessness of phenomena is very easy to realize. So that is the explicit advice from Geshe Rinpoche. First, focus on realizing the selflessness of persons, because this is easier to realize. And once it's realized, realizing the selflessness of phenomena is easy.
어디네 자다 만주게 가사게 다세 가사게 다 진럽나 로르와 셰바르와 네 취기 다 진라네 셰바레 다 가사게 다세는 취기 다세니디 가사데레며 만주 로르야 나두게 딕파 로르야 나야데 까고야디 되다 만주 로르파디 나두게 디 낭마죠제 까고 거르와다 가자서로 까고야 가짜 세디 최기 다다 강사에 다디 만들어 로를 나야 돼 가짜고 로파 셔도 거디 낭마 주어 제 까고 그러지 가짜시고 지나다 강사 다 세디 간이실라워선 강사 세디 나도 강사 세디 강라야 마도 코롱 회니 룹드바지 예바이나 델라 강사게 다라고 그래 강사가 다 세디 지나다 최기 다 세디 강사를先比去풍波老说吧 강라야 마도 코롱 회니 룹드바지 예바이나 델라 최기 다 세고 그래 딩이도 요 말이다 최기 다상 강사게 다 세고 강사게 다 세디 강사 강라야 마도 랑 회니 룹바지 줍되어지 예나 데니기 델레 줍되어지라 예도 요 말데 데니기 강라마다 랑원이 줍어 지글로신 능고로 봐 데니기 나와나 신지 요바이나 델레 강사가 다요 됐다서 다 강사래 신 풍보라서 봐 풍보당 초와도 두시 풍보라서 봐 아니 강라마다 랑원이 줍되어지라 줍어지라 아니 취기 다서 딩이데 자오기는 매바르다 뉴고 최기 다다 가사 다 세디 균이요 말해서 균이요 말해서 된나 아주 가사 다서 간지 질레기레스는 가사 강라마다 랑원이 줍되어지라 가사가 다라고 그래서 최기 다 세디 가사래 신비치 강라마다 랑원이 줍되어지라 최기 다라고 그래서 딩이디 요르베스는 자오기는 요 말해서 냐마 요바제 다데 매바르베스는 되네 말해서 아니 마음바의 연구를 해서 다들 매바지 마음바의 영향을 해서 인디하 말이죠. 균이 냐마 요 말에 다들 요 말 마음바의 영향이 요 말을 해야 되네.
The self of phenomena appears to consciousness and then is grasped at as existing in the way that it appears. This grasping is a consciousness. It's a consciousness that grasps at the phenomena as existing by way of their own essence, by their own self. Likewise, what follows, the self of persons, appears and is grasped at by a consciousness which grasps at the self or the person as existing in the way that it appears. So these two selflessness, these two selves, the self of persons and the self of phenomena, are the object of negation, the object to be negated or refuted or eliminated, eradicated. This is what needs to be eradicated. So how does the self of persons appear to us? It appears as if it is independent, meaning it appears as if it is not influenced by anything at all. It appears to be self-existent, existing by way of its own nature, as well as appearing to be unchanging. So independent and unchanging, something fixed, static, real. This is how it appears to us. And then we grasp at it as existing in the way that it appears. So this is how the self appears, the self of persons, and is grasped, and the self of persons is grasped at in this way. The self of phenomena, other than being a different object, appears in exactly the same way. So whether it's the body or any of the minds, so the physical mental consciousnesses, the physical mental aggregates, or any external phenomenon, it appears as being truly existent and is grasped at as existing truly, as existing in the way that it appears, in this fixed, static, real way. But this self of persons or self of phenomena that appears to be existing in the way that it appears, or seems to exist in the way that it appears by way of its own nature or essence, it does not exist in this way. Nothing, anywhere, exists in this way, nor has anything ever since beginningless time ever existed in this way, nor will anything ever, at any point in the future, exist in this way. The self of persons and the self of phenomena does not exist at all.
Tadine kansa se kanla ma rang ngone tubade yo marete ina azulo lya du snang yo de kala lo lya kansa snang du kabla kanla yema do rang ngone tubade nangore Din Nawa Nashin Dinish Yore Sembigi Zimbadilla, that doesn't Marikba Alagor, doesn't Marikba. That Dinashin Pumbo de Ganzo, Pumbo de Nan, the Lolia Nan, Pumbo de Galama, the Rangun, the Yore Basin, Yomarete, in a Lola Nan, the Pumbo de Nan, Galama, the Rangun, to Nangore. Nawa Nashi, your Dinashin, your Zimbadilla, Chiki doesn't Maripas or Dingy Dilla, Kansa doesn't Maripa, and Chiki doesn't Maripas or did it. And so how go did it, and Yomo Bazawa, and so you Zawa, never saw it, Zawa never saw a dingy body how, dingy did it. Adi, Manzoke, Samla, the Tenishil Lagri, Tenishil, a Sabur child, washing more, how go and washing over the did it.
Whatever object appears to consciousness, so whatever it is that appears to consciousness, we think of, whether it is the person or anything else, any phenomenon, it appears as if it exists by way of its own essence. And then a consciousness grasps at it as existing in the way that it appears. And this is because consciousness is grasped at true existence, in that this phenomenon, whatever it may be, the self or another phenomenon, as existing by way of its own nature. And this phenomenon is not in accordance with reality. It is an ignorance. And it is the ignorance of true grasping. And the ignorance of true grasping, that term applies to any phenomenon that we grasp at as existing, or apprehend as existing in the way that it appears, whether it is the self or any other phenomenon, such as the physical mental aggregates. So this consciousness of grasping is an ignorance, because it's not in accordance with reality. And so a generic name for this ignorance is ignorance of true grasping. If it's grasping at the self, it's often called grasping at it's called the grasping at the self of persons. And if it's grasping at the ignorance of grasping at the self of persons, and if this ignorance is grasping at a phenomenon other than the person, such as a mental consciousness, a thought, or the body, or any other physical phenomenon, then it is called the ignorance of grasping at the self of phenomena. So this we need to come to understand, that this ignorance of true grasping can be expressed in different ways, as the ignorance of grasping at the self of persons, or the ignorance of grasping at the self of phenomena. This we need to come to understand, and not only understand it intellectually, we need to recognize this for ourselves, come to know it through analysis and investigation of our own mental process.
Chiri marikba tsam mayang diri shigyu des korwe tsawar gyube marikba dame topege sherabki kada midun chosu gyuba deyins.
So now returning to the text. So just first to say, Andy has handed out a reprint of page 18, what we have completed. So this was what we looked at over the preceding 3 weekends, but I made many changes to the translation. So it's just an incorporation of the changes that I verbally mentioned in class. And in addition, in the sutra quotation at the top, based on Tsepel's question last week, or statement really, that's saying something is a mere name is actually quite different from saying something is named, it was correct. So I changed that translation, and I changed it to how it's usually translated. Instead of only a name, I changed it to merely labeled. So the top part, the sutra quotation, that those changes I didn't mention in class, but the other two changes, big changes, which I think was in this but in many sutras and treaties. And then below those last two paragraphs, they also changed quite a lot. So that's what you have here. But we are not on that page. That's now past. We're now at the top of page 19. The second sentence at the top of page 19. In general, there are many types of mere ignorance. However, that which is being explained here is the ignorance that is the root of cyclic existence and of the discordant class which is contrary to the wisdom that realizes selflessness.
Dikarina Martin Bena Maribare. And you did Karina sometimes the Hamo de la Maribare. Says that I'm Jugi Maripa said, Hamogu Ludilla, Hamogu Lud Maripas or the Negate Maripala Mambuyores. Is not Inaya Dirishi de Sir. Dadi Kapsushake Maripa said, Dirwa, Kuvid Kasore, Mother Nyomo, Pang Maripa, Pangor, Maripa, and the Nyomo Batam Zevi Gudi, Sashegi, Maripa de Kanajila was. Kowe zawar gyube marikpa la kore. Tati nganzu shea di, dini ma shea di da, kowe zawar gyube marikpa ase. Kowe zawar gyube marikpa ase. Kowe zawar gyube marikpa di, dame to be shirab dang galda res. Ko doksho chadyo res. Doksho obasitza. Ruwa di ruwa.
In general, there are many types of mere ignorance. So to understand this well, let's look at the meaning of the word ignorance. Ignorance is the word English word ignorance is a translation for the literal Tibetan of not knowing. So what is ignorance? It means not knowing. So there are many instances, or many types of not knowing. There are many things that are either not known or known correctly, that are known incorrectly. So this is the meaning of ignorance. Ignorance means not knowing. So just to say as an aside, when we studied awareness and knowers, we came across the term knower. So this is the knower here, not knowing. So to go back to again this commentary. So there are many types of ignorances or not knowings. But what is referred to here is specifically the ignorance that is the root of cyclic existence. So to express this differently, though, make it clear, we could maybe say that what is being explained here is the not knowing of reality, or the misknowing even of reality. And that is the root of cyclic existence. So it's not understanding or not knowing reality that is the root of cyclic existence. And this not knowing, or this ignorance, is of the discordant class, which is contrary to the wisdom that realizes emptiness, which just means that this ignorance, which is the root of cyclic existence, is completely the opposite to the wisdom realizing emptiness. These are two contradictory minds. They are completely the opposite.
Marikpa said, "Yudi hamogo de la marikpa says, just did la rotation marikpa tennis like this." That Delia, you the hamogo marikpa in Gureve says, "Antival league around the Chapel Chapen." Chisade, Yudi, Tirina, Mina, Sambegi, Tesum Jorwa, Tesum the marikpa reve, marikpa marwa, what Tesum was. Chisam Chidi, Chizadini Zada. Ina Mina Sambege Tesum Yungore, the Yudi Topege at Casa Yiju say Yungore, this way you do go, Marina, you did semi human, Chisa, Tesum Marikba Chagribe, Senat Lambda, and the certain Tesum said to get Marikbara Chago Mare, you do go, Martina, you Hamoa Chazan Marikba Chago Mar, like Yomar. That Sabu Richard, that Samarach Marikba, you deal by somebody. Dida re mare dopa samya mesava naktom jedya jorwa naktom dona ji jedya jor dida di re mare samba samla gaya ma jeba an dopa yang tesumya ma jeba yudi gaya hamo naktom jedya jorwa di marik pase di jeda tesum sedi 이주여와 록셰여와 대수자사 베네 레기로 요마레선 베삼도 록셰여와 디서 도고 뭐 유도고 리고 말에 아니 마릭바레베선 데서 마릭바라기 말했다 다 마릭바세데 간니다 지나 마릭바세데 간니로스 유딜미 지 유딜 삼다에도 디린다이 마인 가 제다 마레 가야 마서 메베 낙담놈 라직식 제데바질라 데니질라 마릭 데니길로 델라다 마릭바세지 다디 이내 곧 유모도 디 레삼 짐바이나다 마리바차 로제 차르고 디 레세 디 레 자다 아니 레다 마레세네 도관이산에 태숨 자체로 근데 데니게 가야 마슴바지 곧 뒤디 가야 땅 가야 마템 바자 하 먹어와 디다 디 마레 선비게 하 가야 메베 낙돔돔 지글로 지어봐 디 마리바스 월다
So the meaning of the word ignorance then is not knowing an object. It's just not knowing an object. But if one debates this then and says, if an object is not known, is that consciousness then ignorance? So what about, if that were the case, then let's take some illustrations. And again, going back to awareness and knowers, let's take doubt. So doubt is this wavering mind. Is it like this or is it like that? So doubt clearly doesn't know its object, but is it ignorance? What about correct assumption? Does correct assumption know its object? It hasn't realized its object, but does it know its object? Is it, if it hasn't realized the object, can it be called, is it then an ignorance? So one can have some doubt, one can play with this here, to see if merely, or if it's just that, not knowing something, not knowing an object, not knowing something is ignorance, then everything that's not realized, all those consciousnesses, then perhaps are the ignorances. So whilst one can have some fun on the debate yard with that, in brief, what the meaning of ignorance is, or what would make a consciousness that doesn't know its object, what would make a consciousness that doesn't know its object an ignorance is when one is completely in the dark about the object. One is deluded, one is in the dark about the object. Whereas if one has some doubt, thinking, is it like this? Is it not like that? There is some light. Whereas ignorance, one is enshrouded in the dark.
가서리 다진 말이 대코나니라 뭐베 말이 봤어요. 대코나니 세데 라싱 동반이 독소 나네 라싱 주바진베 진바시고로 디 셰럽기 지당 말이 받이 말에 다디 세 말이 봤어야디 다음에 또 동반이 또 셰럽기 갈라 미든 초수교 바래서 미든 초수교 바래서 지당 동반이 또 별로디 간에 또 베네 가사 다음에 봐도 별로디 가르 도베글로디 가르도고 그래서는 가사세디 강화에마도 랑원이 두바디기 민두 선배 삼로데 또 별로디라 가사 다음에 또 별로와 가사 다음에 또 별로 다 가사 다선세디기 가사디 강화에마도 랑원이 두바지 나네 데니 두섬 진디라 데니 가다샤 찍디 민두 선배 찍디 요래 삼삼도 데니 가다샤로와 제가 동방이 또 베시럽기 갈라미디 초레스디 가다세디 진당 가와레스 진다디 가와레스 동이 또 베셔럽데 가르 진거 강라에마도 랑원데 두바디 메바 진거 동산 또고 진거 강라에 또 랑원데 두바 자오기니 민두 섬거레스 진거레스 다 가사 다선세아디 강라에 가사세 강라에마도 랑원데 두바 나와나 두 섬베 진거레스 디니 진나디 가와레스 아 데니치라 다 추기 다선라도 추기 담에도 별로디 풍보디게 강라에마도 랑원이 두바디 동바레 민두 선배 진거로와 도고로와 추기 다선디 풍보디 강라에마도 랑원이 두바디 두 선배 진거로와 세자디 담에도 베셔라지 가래 동방이도 베셔라지 가다 민초세 디컵스 대컵시에 마릭 바사디 데네실라고 해시래.
As the text says, there are many types of ignorances, there are many things that are not known. But here we are specifically talking about the ignorance that is the root of cyclic existence. It is the ignorance of reality. So this is what we are looking at here, looking at identifying so that we can eradicate this ignorance about reality. And this ignorance of reality is completely contradictory to, as it goes on, to the wisdom that realizes selflessness, or the wisdom that realizes emptiness. These two are polar opposites. They are completely contradictory. And to understand how this is the case, this ignorance we're talking about here believes that phenomena exist in the way that they appear. The wisdom that is completely opposite to this realizes that they are empty of existing in the way that they appear. So therefore, the ignorance believes that phenomena exist in the way they appear. The wisdom realizes that they do not exist in the way they appear. So if something believes that one consciousness believes it is, and the other one knows it is not, clearly these are contradictory. And to put it again, going back to our studies of awareness and knows, the difference between these two consciousnesses is their way of apprehending, or their mode of apprehending. This is where the difference lies. The ignorance's way or mode of apprehending is believing that phenomena exist in the way they appear. Wisdom has realized the way of apprehending, or the mode of apprehending of wisdom, is that phenomena are empty of existing in the way that they appear.
다른 가지고 가지고 예디겐 배 tempo 냐마 다코 토마 메바네 다디 바도 가지고 예디게 로디 가르스네 다센디레다 간사다스 추기 다스샤디 예여바 제산디 예여바데 가지고 하고고 말바다 하 먹어데 니께 거의 꿰여바 하고 거로 하 먹어데 거의 꿰여바 하고 두고 말 꿰여바 먹어도 니메바 소에게 탑람 제기고 말 탑람 메지도야네 거다가랑 하지 그러더니 꿰니 무디니 레디가 차고로 와 Tene inza ngāzu hā gōgōya di ngāzu ki la kāngsā dāzindā, kāngsā asya di kāngla ima da rāngwē ni dhūpa nāwā na nāngō re, di nāngsu di nāwā na ji zimbi lo di dāzin ri asya tāng. Tā ngāzu pōngbō di kāngla ima da rāngwē dhūpa nāngō re, nāwā na xin yō re zimbi zimba di, tā chūki dāzin ri asya di. Di nī di hā gōgōshi, di nī di dāngba hā gōgōya di kēchi mō chā gōre. Di nī hā gō ne, di nī Dine nga zuge da jebache tongpa yi doya liya, an jebache, an di jebache huay cha gore. Da wo di ni da haku nga sung go gore.
So whilst phenomena have never existed by the way of their own nature or essence, as we see in the very first line on this page, has absolutely never been known to validly exist in this way. Nevertheless, since beginningless time, this ignorance, grasping at the self and grasping at phenomena as existing in the way they appear, as existing truly, this is so stable within us. And it is so stable within us in that we have never even known that this consciousness is a wrong consciousness. It's misapprehending, misengaging with reality. Never knowing that, we've never analyzed it. We've never sought to eradicate this consciousness because we haven't even thought about it. Because we've never thought about it, we've made no effort to counteract this ignorance. Hence, we are so habituated to it and arises readily, spontaneously, with no effort at all. Understanding this, then we can recognize that this will take concerted effort to turn around. And the first step is to intellectually come to understand the topic and then apply ourselves to this. or whilst we're understanding, apply our understanding to our experience. Come to see, how does the self, our sense of I, appear? How do other phenomena, such as various thoughts, external phenomena, our body, etc., how do these appear to the mind? And then investigate. So first, whilst we're understanding the knowledge, we need to try to recognize how the self of persons appears and the self of phenomena appears. And then we investigate to see if the appearance is in accordance with reality or not.
And Dambo Karaha and Lolia Casa, Nana the Hago, is Nana the Kansnangdu. Chizan Nana the Naya the Kasha the Musungores. Chizan Kasha the Naya the Nikanisnangdu Sibi. The Deuce in Naya sometimes, Tangan the Ducine, that Nombani, Toyagi, Dondalia, and sometimes Dambo Kasa. Trupa Gacha the Musungu, Gacha Musunwala, Gasa the Nanda the Hago. She's a Hago and Zadanga to get some tangle and do Sina do Shedine. Nabuanga said the Chike Sosuginga said some time. Chinga says sometime dance Chelia, Tanga says sometime, Tanga says sometime the nigger some of the Langadi, Nang the Kanashi Nangu, Sempidu, Chishimchi the Kabla, Nadi. 저기 풍보대다 저 매되게 풍보들라 저 매던 그런 풍보들 로서 가가지 여바지 해버리는 거 같다디 그런 여배 직 그런 왜네 풍보들라 되바 저와 균에 매되게 그런 직 풍보다 재매 저 된신 재매 되고 맞되바 저와 균에 매던 그런 왜네 줍되바 디네지 난거 여바지 딩아 저 두신의 심주시나 하고 그러다 Deniki Nanda Hago, Tambo di Tushi, Tambo Nas, sometime, Nga said sometime the Kabla. Nga said sometime, Nadi Lola Nandi, Pumbo did that din, Joy Basang, the Pumbo, Jamie Duensha, Jawakini made to Koron and Drup Nangu, the Karis Nangu was a big Nana did that Shimju war. That's him Tambo di Chawar.
I mentioned earlier that one can analyze the self of phenomena or persons as one wishes, but Lama Tsongkhapa emphasizes that it's easier to realize the self of persons. So what we need to negate is our grasping, this consciousness that grasps at the self of persons, that grasps at the self as existing in the way that it appears, as existing truly. So that is the object of negation. But before we can negate it, we have to recognize how the self appears, to come to understand, or come to experience for ourselves how the object, the self, appears to us as being truly existent. And then, when that is clear, we'll be able to seek that truly existent self, and that there is the object of negation, which we will not find. So how does our sense of self, our self, appear to us? So it appears as being, the word would be truly existent, which means it has the characteristic of being independent of our physical and mental aggregates, of our body and various minds. Being independent of them, or different, separate, unrelated to them, disconnected or not connected to them, independent. So this we need to get a feel for, get to understand, have some clarity what it means to have the self appearing as truly existent. Which we try to get a feel for this, our sense of self-identity, appearing to be unrelated to our varying minds, as well as our body. When we get that clear, when we've recognized that, then our investigation will be successful, because we will have identified the object of negation, because the object of negation will have appeared, and now one seeks it out. Does the self exist in the way that it appears or not? Is it truly existent or not?
Deniki Nata di some danger do she. Then I do Pumbola some dabina, 대지상으로 다도 삼다는 거 이 풍부 세야지 이 풍부 세지 삼나 다주 되네 삼다도 갑라 삼다네 아니다 이 풍부 라야도 다 로델량 풍부된 이 풍부 세야지 간듯이 난기도 이 풍부 라든 삼나라 가르 샤다 빡빡다 루고다 차다 차단 domde 바루지 창도 능거를 배서는 네 능거 말와 되네 가르 능거는 풍부 세야지 아주 샤다 차 빡빡 될래 맞대 봐 코롱 지 도도어지 유에돼 버리지 로야 지는 거를 그런 거는 줍대 버리는 거디 나라디 풍부라 신주바 나타데 그래서 로야 풍부세디 로 바삼다디 풍부세비 로텔이야 풍부 나도 걸라 간스 난구도 세비 나나디야 제바 제제 낭타디 안하도 제심지도 풍부세디 저기 류기 안 차실라 마되바 그런 거는 줍대 버리지 는 거를 다 나타디 는 거를 디 나타디다 풍부라 신주바 나타데리 지상 디나와 나시 지여바인다 풍부하신 주바세도 최고래. 디가자 디하고 거래 계신 버려지.
Again, then earlier I said that you can meditate first on the selflessness of phenomena or persons. It's up to you, but Rinpoche encourages us to engage first in the self, seeking out the self of persons. But as beginners, it's good to actually do both in the same session, because it takes a while to get really clear how the object appears as truly existent. So having looked for the self, tried to get a feel for that, how a sense of self appears to us as being truly existent, then move on to the selflessness of phenomena, taking, for example, our physical aggregate, our body. And try and get a feel for how our body appears to our mind. So the theory, the text will say it appears as being truly existent, which means it appears as independent. So how would that then work? So we're using as an illustration the body, but it would apply to all other phenomena too. Our body appears to be independent, meaning it's unrelated, different, disconnected from everything else. It appears as if it doesn't require causes and parts, for example. But intellectually, we can readily recognize our body is comprised of innumerable parts, both the coarse parts as well as subtler parts within, such as on the atomic level. So our body is actually an accumulation of a vast number of parts. But it doesn't appear to our mind like that. It appears as if it is unrelated of the parts, unrelated to the parts, disconnected from them, independent of them. That's how it appears, but it's not how it exists. So that we can understand intellectually quite easily, but we need to get that first part right, to get a clear feeling or understanding of how the body appears as being truly existent, as being independent. Then we can seek out that truly existent body.
That is more restricted. The names of that, then ma, the Geduya, Tonyu Dunjubale, said that the Gimten and Tonyu Dunjupo Comboluki, Sesip, Tonyu Dunjuban, la Carson Sene, Yuda, Jinle, and Kiwi Nam, Yada Pane, Tobakang, Dene, Tumbe, Marikson, Dele, and La Junior Jungs.
Meditation then I've described are first the self of persons and then the self of phenomena. The self of phenomena just as the one illustration of the body, but it can and should be applied to all other phenomena too, is of crucial importance. So now let's return to the text. We come to a verse near the top of page 19 from Nagarjuna's 70 stanzas on emptiness. The conception that phenomena produced from causes and conditions are real was taught by the Buddha to be ignorance, and from that the 12 links of dependency arise.
Duji Chu, Kande Shina, Kansata, Pumbota, and Chiki, Gugi Duba, the Midibi, Duji Chu, Kande Shina, Yudan Gien la Dune Kigore, said Yudan Gien le Gien Wenam Dine Kigore, said.
The term that I've translated as phenomena, it's not an accurate translation. It's normally translated as things, but what it refers to, because things I really don't like as a translation, it refers to all impermanent phenomena, or the term generally used, a synonym, compounded phenomena. So phenomena here specifically refers to impermanent phenomena. The Tibetan is functioning things. So all functioning things, or impermanent phenomena, or phenomena that change, momentarily change, all of them, without exception, arise in dependence on causes. All changing phenomena, impermanent phenomena, compounded phenomena, arise in dependence on causes.
Ina da ngaro lol pa nang du ka nang go resne ka lai ma tyo ba ko rong ngoi ni tu de nang go re jire nang go res den ji gi na wa na xin yo re sem bi jin ba de la an ya da ba da wa se de ya da ba se ne ngoi ne ra si go da ke na wa na xin ngoi ne ra du sem bi jin ba de la an den ji ma ri ba si go da kan ji da la ya da ba se de ni gi de la ne de ba do ba ji bi de ka so re ka so de 나와 나신 다가라 요래 선비 짐바 양다바 또바 강 세데 데니게 또바 강인 바디 있어래 아한줄에 뒤주 최간데 강라마 랑원이 두바 요 말에 대이냐가 줄로를 나는데 강라마도 코롱원이 두부터 난거래 나와 나신 다가라 요래 선비 짐비 또바 기거래 제라 양다바는 또바 강 세야 이제 덴바스 오라데 덴바스 양다 봐서 원내라 시고라 원내라 요래 선배 나와나 신원내라 요래 선배 짐바들 제가 양다 반에 똑바 강세네
Just to first say, in the English, our first two lines in the English are not exactly in accordance with the order of the Tibetan. So again, let's first started with phenomena produced, and now we go to from causes and conditions, and now we're on the second line in Tibetan, which starts with are real, and then later we'll come to the conception. So this term real is how phenomena appear to our mind. So in the case of here, we have impermanent phenomena. All of them, without exception, arise in dependence on causes. But that is not how they appear to us. They appear as if they are real. Real, what it means, and normally there's a different Tibetan word, which is true. And whether we say real or true, it has the same meaning. And that is, they appear to be self-existent, existent from their own side, which is how they appear. And this appearance seems to be real, in accordance with reality, when it is not. So this is how every object of consciousness appears to us. It appears that the way that it appears seems to be correct, or true, or real. So this particular Tibetan word can be translated in three ways, usually correct, or real, or true.
Tsingi digi niga danda niga nyamdula shavaina gyudan kin shen la tune kibi duji gi ngobo che kane shine ya tokpala ya nang yo kala kala ya mat ba rang ngon du ba nengo re nawa na shen dagara re simje jimbi jimba di ki go re je yang da ban tokpa kan jimba din jimba ki go re je re
Looking at these, most of what the first two lines, all impermanent phenomena are produced from causes and conditions, or they arise in dependence on causes and conditions, but how they appear to consciousness is not like that. They appear as if they exist by the way of their own nature, independent of causes and conditions, whereas they are actually, in reality, dependence on causes and conditions. But what appears to us is not something that appears to be, that has come about in reliance on causes and conditions, but rather appears as if it's independent, separate, not needing causes and conditions. In other words, as real, as true, or this appearance seems to be real in accordance with reality, or true, or correct in accordance with reality.
Dene tembe marik sung sore. Dene tembe marik sung, dene tembe marik sung si de jinye gi mobo ti ju ge che, kan de na gyu dan kin le de ki go de, kan la na de ka la kan la de ba ma rang mo ni tu ba neng go res. Dene rang mo ni tu ba re as me jimbe tok ba kan yin ba de, dene tok ba de la sang ye jem den de gi, ane marik pa sa de marik par de khona ni la mo be marik pa sa de res. On the marik sung dene de la de khona ni la mo be marik pa la gi res. On do son ba res. Jeza tokpa gang se de gang le ba do rang wen de juba jimbigin na wa na shin jimbig tokpa de ye se tokpa de la minga la go se ne marik pa se ne sang jem ne marik pas de khona ni la mo be marik pa se ne di re ta se ne de khona ni la mo be marik pa se de la go re se de sung wa re je.
The conception, reading the first 3 lines, the conception that phenomena produced from causes and conditions are real was taught by the Buddha to be ignorance. The conception then is this grasping at impermanent phenomena as not as being produced from causes and conditions, but grasping at them as being real, in other words, as existing in the way they appear, truly, by way of their own nature. And that conception or that consciousness, the Buddha taught to be ignorance.
Di marik bare, te khona il marik bare es. Chesa da sikshiba dele yanla jungyu jungs. Chesa di da ngado nyomo ba chesa ke yu tsawa di marik ba di res. Dela tene ane nyomo ba ke nyomo onge lesa lege onge da ngos khwal ke dini ki tene yanla jungyu se de an tsawi yu marik ba dela tene ane yanla jungyu di tene yanla jungyu se li go re je de.
And as we saw in the paragraph above, whilst there are many types of ignorance, the ignorance that is being referred to here is the root of cyclic existence. It is from this ignorance of true grasping or self-grasping that all our afflictions arise and contaminated karma is accrued and the other 12 links arise. All from this ignorance.
That is that the Nala to get the Geshe Nigeria, and to Yomba, you say you saw the Tanga to get Kansa, Dasin Mariba, and Denzi Maripasadi, Maripasset, Denzi Maripasset, Denzi Maripa the Chadu, the Nanzukilla, Yedebare. Chesa, that did Denzi Maripa, Tambo Denichi, Pat Nanzulola, Nanta, Denish Nangdua, Simbe Nanta Samta, Nana Samtane, Deni Nawanashin. Yore Zimba or did Zimba de let Denzin Maripasi did Lagore Sage, did Denzin Maripare Sage, Dusin and Wilson. That was on Savechella, and the Karasam does it. The Deniking Ha said the Kansa said, Nang do Kala Yamato around when you do it Nangudua, now on Ashin, do not when they let Denishi Reta Mare said, I want to give him Chevachi or what is that? That Pumbi tend to part Chevachi do chit, and Kazam to do Chevachi. Kaza said, Kala Emma to run when you do a Zawaki Mindu Sempiki, some logic, Zawaki Mindu Sempiki, Evani Biki, some logic, Leodu, the Tombagasa, Tatomato, Topa, Tomba, Topares. That he told to Gala and Deji, that Deji Lol Panatu, now and she is our Mindu, some down, how go you do, and now and you heard a simple Zimbadi, Lolo shame, but no tree, but how to work that. That the how go to you didn't. Della dene nutrition bahagosana nutriting on to get Beijing Marwachina and the Chalai Nakarina Nutrina, how one deep how you were Panmodochina, and didn't nutrition how to. Since the nutrition bahagod, the nigger tomba in Topilodia, Gom, Shuk Cheshire, the nigger Lodi, no treaty, my shoe chunchu drawn a Koran, and the nation and the Geshe contract, the new Drea, and then do chene Jigores, the Neza, doesn't don't buy it or doesn't Marik by the Jiggy Paka, Vashaka Shavana, then Geshe gave me a contract married, Nagake Yongo mother. Just that Meza and Le Ambassador mother, Le Ambassador, Dibasa made. Made you in the Koala, Nanson Dungan Yash, or the Yungo Marajir. Then that Tombani said the Dushin, some Tangur, Tambo, some Tana, Jebachetana, Dushin drove, said Sumoroda.
To summarize what we've been looking at this evening is these two ignorances, the one that grasps at the self of phenomena and the other that grasps at the self of persons, or called collectively the ignorance of self-grasping or the ignorance of true grasping. Not only do we all have these on our continuum, but due to incredibly strong habituation to them since beginningless time, the ignorance of true grasping arises continuously, effortlessly, ceaselessly. Because we are so habituated to it, it's not something we recognize at all. And in fact, it's not just that we don't recognize it. Even when we try to, it is difficult. So we need to come to understand this presentation and apply it to ourselves. And how to do so? The first and the crucial step is we need to identify or recognize for ourselves how whatever it is we are thinking about, that appears to be self-existent, truly existent. Whether it's our sense of self, our I, or any other phenomena, such as another consciousness, our body, or an external phenomenon, whatever it is we're thinking about that object, it appears as if it is independent and unchanging. It appears as if it doesn't require causes or parts or imputation. It appears as if it doesn't require those because it appears to be self-existent, has its own essence or nature or characteristics by which it exists, and therefore doesn't require parts or causes or imputation. And to the extent that we can recognize or identify the appearance of true existence, to that extent, when we analyze the object, seeking its nature or essence by which it seems to exist, we will recognize no such essence or nature can be found. That and every object is empty of existing by way of its own nature or identity. And that is a wisdom, a consciousness that is a wisdom because it's in accordance with reality. It's identifying, understanding how phenomena do exist in reality. And that, when we give rise to that wisdom, we will then know with complete certainty, based on our own meditative experience, and not just merely intellectually, that the consciousness that grasps at phenomena as existing in the way they appear is a wrong consciousness, an ignorance. And knowing that it's an ignorance, knowing that experientially, even though this ignorance of self-grasping and true grasping will continue to arise, we will not trust it. We will not be deceived by it. And not being deceived by it, the afflictions that then follow will be weak. Our anger, our attachment, our pride and jealousy, these will all be weak. Because whatever object arises to us, we'll know it doesn't exist in the way that it appears. Ourself, an external phenomenon, a particular thought, doesn't exist in the way that it appears. So therefore, why desire something that doesn't exist in this way? Why be angry about something that doesn't exist in this way? Why want something for herself that doesn't exist in the way it appears? So in this way, our afflictions weaken, and the strength of the karma, the negative karma we create, is greatly weakened. And through habituating ourselves to this meditation, eventually we'll eradicate this ignorance completely. And then No afflictions, such as attachments and anger, will ever arise again because the root cause has been eradicated. No further contaminated karma will be accumulated, and we will experience no suffering, pain, or even displeasure. So this is why it's imperative that we make effort to repeatedly over a sustained period reflect on reality, meditate on emptiness.
당보 갈래들 가려서는 당보로야 간사 다세야데 데모도 갈로야 간이 차유도 선비가 로래 차다다 하고야다 되네게 차네 안 되네게 지나데 하고 안 되네게 두친 하고는 될야 제바체체 두친 제바체 네 디서 하고야 갈래 하자고 제바체 되네 즉 내가 섬서 동반이 떠야돼 디바도 갈래 하고 다 동반이 또 차와이나 담 지람갈 마소나다 차사하고 서로 가지다 지난다 동반이 또 사와나 이 동반이 같이 지금 소식이 같이 마 곰네 야가 곰도는 배제 곰도는 그 교가 상예설 줘야려 다냐냐냐 지금 그때 줘야로 아마도 제샤샤 요말 와데 지난다 그 당보 동반이 마도 녀야 망고 거래야디 될 고고로 와데 주실 마선에 하모가지 람갈 마선에 하모가 제니 되야들 망고 고고로 봐 하고서는 그도 따르 주고로 봐 디나시 당분이 마도 녀야 지간에 간데 심주제다 봐 망고 고고 동반이 또 사회 제라 디고 가제 베제제 검신의 야야 겨겨도 마다 당도와도 지바차고로 봐 당분한테디 제체다 당보 되네 삼다나데 차고래.
If we need to go somewhere that we haven't been before, not knowing the route will be really difficult. So if we need to go somewhere and we don't know the path, we'll waste a lot of time ambling here, there, knowing we want to get to a particular destination, but we have no idea of the path to get there. Later, if we get a map, a lot easier, but still, little difficult. Once we have experience of this path, when we've been to that destination, then every time, very easy. So too then, with our cultivation of the mental paths within us, we're still at very much the beginner stage of likened to someone trying to get to a destination and doesn't really know how to get there. The map is not very clear yet. But to bring clarity to this map so that we can understand the path well, we need to receive many teachings and keep reflecting on this topic, particularly that first step. In meditation and out of meditation, try and get a feel for how phenomena appear to mind, to see how phenomena appear as if they exist without requiring causes or paths, that they appear to be real. And we give rise to such certainty that it is like that, and we can feel the resulting afflictions. So when these afflictions arise, in relation to what they're arising for, look how that appears to consciousness and see if it exists in that way or not. And to the extent one makes effort at this, applies oneself again and again and again, this deep habituation we have to believing that things are how we believe them to be, how they appear to our mind, this will start to be challenged and weakened, and it will get easier. And for those who have realized emptiness, for them the path is clear. There are no doubts, and it's straightforward. So for us to get there, we make effort repeatedly, in and out of meditation, trying to see how it is that phenomena appear to us, why it is these afflictions have arisen, how did that preceding object appear to us. And we'll get to recognize again and again, phenomena do not exist in the way they appear. Now grasping at this is delusional. They do not exist in the way they appear. Thank you so much. We'll conclude here for tonight. If you have questions, there'll be time tomorrow, so we can do questions then. So thank you very much.